NCAA track and field performance continues to astonish. We've talked about this a little in the previous episodes. What's been going down now?
Well, it's a world record in the hurdles, in the men's hurdles. That's the first thing. It's probably the biggest news. So, Jacoby Tharp ran 12.75 with a 1 meter tailwind. So that was legal. And so then that was in the semi. And then the final, he ran 12.9 to win with a small headwind. So he's also, so I looked him up. He's national champion and world under 20 champion in 2024. And he got sixth in the world champs last year in the hurdles, in the men's open hurdles. So, obviously very talented. This is a pretty impressive run. He's American to that point. And then other races that were, pretty impressive. So the 400 meter winner, Samuel Ogazi, is a Nigerian born. So he ran the fourth fastest 400 in history.
Wow.
So the three people ahead of him, Wayde van Niekerk, Michael Johnson, and Butch Reynolds. So this is a real impressive run. He ran 43.38. He is the 2025 NCAA champion, and no one's surprised by that. He also got seventh in Paris, and obviously he won that race. Is also his 2026 champion, and then seventh in the Olympics. So this guy's obviously really impressive. He's a world class. And again, this is what we talked about with the NCAA, where you have all these people who are from effectively been brought in to run to win championships, right? So, and the last one is a bit more controversial. Adaejah Hodge, she's second. She got second in the NCAA 100 meters behind Shanae Walker, who's Jamaican. Now, Adaejah's from the British Virgin Islands. So she ran 10.63 in the semi-final to win that and obviously get a national record, but also break Sha'Carri Richardson's NCAA record, which was 10.75.
Wow.
So this is, very quick time. She also won, but doesn't hold, the gold in the 200 meters and silver in the 100 meters at under 20 world champs in 2024. And we'll talk about this. And she was a Paris Olympian as well. So there's some questions. Like I saw a lot of questions in it. Maybe my social feed is let's call it cynical. A lot of questions about doping around these results. And then I was doing some reading into Adaejah. So she served a 2-year doping ban. And so she tested positive for metabolites of GW501516.
She's only 20 years old, and she's already served a doping ban.
So she has. So it's a metabolic modulator. We'll talk about this in a second. So she tested positive at those under 20 world championships and was subsequently stripped of those titles. So apparently, rather than deflect it, she sat down and sort of started talking to them straight away and acknowledged she had a violation, and then it was agreed that she probably ingested it unknowingly. And so therefore it became contamination of negligence rather than deliberate cheating. So then you accept a 2-year ineligibility and standard sanction. So effectively that lasted 17 months though, because of everything that had happened around it. As a result, she's obviously stripped of her gold medals. And so this is for basically cooperation and acceptance of responsibility rather than trying to deflect it. So for context, so she rose to prominence as a high schooler at the Monteverde Academy in Claremont, Florida. In March 2023, she ran 22.33 to break the high school indoor world 200-meter record. And her teammate, Issam Asinga, set the under 20 world record in the 100 meters in 2023. He tested positive for the same substance in July. He claimed the positive test stemmed from ingesting contaminated Gatorade gummies. I think we talked about this at the time because I remember the Gatorade gummies.
Yes.
He was handed a 4-year ban and stripped of his record. Both Hodge and Asinga were coached by Monteverde Academy Gerald Peary, and I think we talked about him as well, a 2-time Olympic sprinter for Zambia, and he was provisionally suspended as a result of this, and he was suspended for having possession of that GW1516 as an athlete in 2018-2019 and another metabolic modulator, meldonium, as a coach in 2024 and failing to cooperate with the investigation and providing false inaccurate information. So 3 of his athletes have tested positive for the GW1516 between 2023 and 2024.
I was going to say where there's smoke, there's fire, but there's not even smoke or fire. They're just positive tests. That's what they are for the same substance.
Yeah, so for those very interested in very technical, I won't go into it too much, but it's a PPAR gamma activator. And there's an interesting mice study showing that it's potentially performance enhancing in them. So there's been quite a few bans for it across cycling and a few other things. So it's probably it's probably helpful, unfortunately. So this got me thinking about people who are cynical about these other records, right? Like, so there's a bunch of records or fast times run, and there's different ways to think about this. And, one way to think about this is Bayesian reasoning. and I don't know if people are familiar with this, but basically you have a prior, your starting belief. So your starting belief is everyone's clean, everyone's dirty. Some people are, you're dirty if you're from Kenya, you're clean if you're from America, whatever that is, right? You start with a baseline probability, right? And then you get new evidence, and then you update your belief, right? So the more positives we get, perhaps the more we say, okay, these people are cheating or not cheating, right? And the more unbelievable it is, or the more people who are in the top 100 list of all time who are banned, and people there. So you would update it is basically what I'm thinking about. And I think so that's the way to think about this, I think, is the Bayesian reasoning. But there's also like how to be a fan of the sport, because it's really hard to be a fan if you believe everyone's doping. Full stop. So I think I've grappled with this a lot. I get asked about this question a lot. So I think the answer is, there's a Bayesian reasoning component to this, like how likely is this to happen? And then there's a secondary level to that, which is how do you decide whether you believe people are clean or dirty? And I think you just have to assume, my take is it's either degrading the sport or you just believe everyone's clean until they're proven not clean. And people could say that's ignorant, but otherwise you can't enjoy the sport, in my opinion, because anytime you see something great, you're like, well, it's probably doping. Because that's the most reasonable way to think about it, is like exceptional performances are probably dirty. That is like probably a fair statement.
I struggle with that a lot as someone who's grown up passionate about cycling, been a cyclist my whole life, and then managed to make it my profession for the last 15 years working in professional cycling. Obviously, the sport has its past, but when you ask outsiders, they will probably still, in a lot of instances, see it as tainted. But along with that, the sport has had a lot of advancements in technology, in science, in engineering, and that doping cloud seems to like write those things off, So we could be seeing incredible clean performances from athletes, but then we view it through a skeptical eye because of the sport's past, And I'm like you, I can be cynical as well. I don't like I'm old enough to know that if something looks like something, it's more than likely it can be the more obvious choice. But yeah, that's something I grapple with in cycling a lot. I mean, and I try to not just have an assumption of doping, because just bicycles, when I look at a bicycle now versus a bicycle 10 years ago, it is chalk and cheese. Like the engineering is phenomenal. So like you say, obviously, once Lance Armstrong got popped and he got done for, then you're in your most cynical view of the sport ever. And then as years go by, you likely have to update your beliefs. I really like what you said there, update your beliefs, which is something I'll probably do less and less of the older I get and the more grumpy I get. I'll just be staunch and believe what I want to believe, but hopefully not.
That's the privilege you get of being old, mate. That's what happens for everyone as they get old. But this is important, I guess, some extra context here. There's not a lot of testing in the NCAA. And I saw some people making comment about that. One thing I would say is if these athletes are competing at the Olympics or World Championships, they would be in testing pools because they would not be allowed to go otherwise. So the NCAA may not be testing them, but there is certainly testing pools around those events, and again, obviously major events like the under 20 World Championships, as we mentioned. And getting popped there is really just like it's an IQ test more than a drug test. Like you shouldn't be getting popped in major championships.
The last thing I will say is, and this is going to sound very, very harsh, but any coach who convinces an athlete who is, let's call it under 20, I think still a child, by law in most countries, 18, you're an adult. But if you are doping or convincing anyone under 20 years to dope, there's a special place. There should be a special place in hell for you, like manipulating someone like that and changing the course and trajectory of their life forever. Like there should be a special place in hell for you, man. For me, that is black and white.
Yeah, I agree with that. You can't be like kids as kids, and you can't be. You should be setting a good example for them. Even if you want them to use drugs in the long term, I still think as a child they shouldn't be doing it. Right? Like you should be setting a good example and setting those habits up first.
Yeah.
So I think best, like it sounds ridiculous, but like best practice for doping would be to start later, not earlier.
Yeah.
Which is such a ridiculous statement. Such a ridiculous statement. Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, it's gonna age like milk, but anyway, whatever.
Should we move on?
Please.